Thank you. Good morning. We call this meeting of the Board of Equalization to order. We have a quorum. 4 of our 5 members are present. We'll wait on the approval of minutes till later in the meeting. Let's go ahead and call the first case, our first and only case. This is application number 95, PID 55879, the applicant's Presidio Apartments LLC. Before we get started, I'm going to just go through like this opening spiel and then kind of go give you the floor. We're the Board of Equalization. The board is comprised of 5 citizens of Albemarle County who are appointed by the Board of Supervisors. We're an independent board. Here's how the hearing will work. You'll have 10 minutes to present your case. The assessor will have 7 minutes to present theirs, and then you'll have that 3 minutes for rebuttal. During the hearing, we may stop to ask you the assessor questions. Please note that for Virginia law, there is a presumption of correctness, so the burden of proof is on the applicant. Before we begin, I'm going to swear in the witnesses. You're going to testify. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony with oral and documentary which you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Any questions before we begin?
No questions, but I've never done this before. And if you all want me to slow down, or if I'm just talking about things you already know, feel free to tell me to skip ahead.
All right, appreciate it. So go ahead and start.
All right, so my name is Phil Krebs. I work with Newcastle Development Group. The case is regarding Albemarle Apartments. Presidio LLC is the legal entity. Newly built apartments off of Peter Jefferson Parkway across from Martha Jefferson. You've probably seen the enormous retaining walls if you've driven down 64. So as of really yesterday, it's about 80% leased up. It's doing well. The assessor reassessed the property effective November 1st from, I believe, 48 million to 71.1 million. Feel free to correct me if I misstate anything. And I really just wanted to bring up 2 points, 2 contentions regarding that assessment. So if you have my packet, which is just 2 or 3, 2 pages and some exhibits, it's really regarding existing vacancy and how that would impact its value on an open market valuation. And then 2, capitalization rates. So that first part, I missed the assessment form. I can say certainty that 4.6 million in revenue, which the assessor applied, and then he applied a 4.25% cap rate. So you can kind of skip that assessment part. But the points that I wanted to make are one, that on an open market, a third-party buyer would discount the price paid for this property for the remaining 15 to 20% occupancy that would be needed to achieve stabilization. Right. So we contested, or we mentioned that point when we received notice of the reappraisal, and Peter said a prospective buyer would not consider the vacancy as an issue, but would buy the property based on its potential. We agree entirely. If I were a third-party buyer, I'd go and I'd say, okay, here are the rents you're getting. Here's what I think is a stabilized income. Here's a market cap rate, and that's the valuation of the property once it achieves stabilization. But I would also lower my purchase price for the revenue that I missed out on. For those, I think our property managers expect this property fully leased mid next year. So this would then be 8 months of reduced occupancy relative to that stabilized value, right? So doing some quick math, I thought it was about $300,000 to $500,000 in lost revenue. Plus, in talking to brokers, I know that a buyer would apply a discount as there is risk involved with taking that property from 80% lease to 100. And obviously that's not like, this isn't going from 0% lease, this isn't nothing to 95, this is 80 to 95. So I didn't apply anything significant on that, but I'll get to that later. But that's to say that a third-party buyer would discount that purchase price for the existing vacancy. Now, the second point is on the market capitalization rates. The cap rate applied to the stabilized revenue here was 4.25%. If you go to page 3 of my packet, I pulled some data from CoStar, which tracks transactions, prices, and cap rates. And you can see that there's in that blue line, there's Charlottesville 4 to 5 star. This is brand new product. It's very good. Is it the best in Charlottesville? Probably not. I mean, 600 West Main is demanding rents that are twice what ours are, but it's new build. It's very nice. So I looked at that blue line. You can see that the cap rates bottomed out kind of the end of 21, beginning of 22, around 5%. And as the chart indicates, currently that's all the way up at 6%, and projected to go upwards. I don't want to go too deep into the macroeconomic environment, but interest rates have gone way up, cap rates have gone way up, and there's no transaction volume. So you might argue that what is truly a market cap rate is actually well in excess of the 6% indicated. So I'll also add that we have other properties in Albemarle County, which we believe are in general fairly assessed, and those cap rates, I believe, are more in the range of 6 to 7%. And we think that is a more fair assessment for this current assessment. So in conclusion, I came up with my own valuation. I used a quite aggressive stabilized future NOI for year end 24. So this is 13 months from now at 3.75 million. That's conversations with our property management team who are kind of optimistic, but once you staple on a market cap rate of 6.5%, my opinion of a fair year-end valuation was 57.7 million. And then I applied an additional discount of 1 million, which consists of the $300,000 to $500,000 in lost revenue as we achieve stabilization, plus an additional approximately 1% to get to 1 million. And that's for the retroactive assessment for 23. So that's all I have. Hopefully I'm quicker than my 10-minute allotment.
No, we appreciate it.
But yeah.
Any questions from the board at this time? No. Was there a request by the board, by the assessor's office for operating data for Archer and Brookhill and Albemarle? And was the data provided? And if not, why not?
Yes, I believe the data was provided. I think so. We have been switching our property management company, so there may have been delays on that if that shows up in minutes or something. But yes, I believe all that data has been provided.
Great.
Any other questions? One quick question for this. So as of 11/1, were all the units, I know all the units were not occupied, but were they all leasable? Were they all complete?
They are complete.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so I will turn it over to the assessor.
Actually, I'll add one slight addition, which is that remaining 20%, especially going into winter. It's hard to lease up. Typically, the best units lease first, the high floors with the mountain views. And then it's kind of the remaining not so great ones that take a while and they lease for less. So our property managers hope to lease that up by mid next year. Could be longer, could be shorter, but it will certainly be for lower rates than our existing.
You know when they were completed?
They were completed kind of midsummer.
Okay.
So to the assessor.
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning.
So this is a 250 unit Class A apartment community up on Pantops, beautiful location. It's got a good amount of amenities. It commands a very good rental rate. As of January 1st, 2023, we had estimated the property was 65% complete. And the partial assessment for the property at that time was 48.2 million as of January 1. On November 1, 2023, with the construction complete, the assessment is now 71.182 million.
And just to clarify that, we calculated in January that the property was worth $71 million. But took 65% of that because we have to pick up whatever percentage is complete as of January. So it's not that we're saying if the value is different now, we're saying more of the value, the property is complete. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So a request for reduction in the assessment estimated that the value of the property was only 59 million because of the lease up that did not commence until April of 2023. The property owner did use two properties for proof of inequity. That's Archer at Brook Hill and Avemore. For the 2023 assessment, we did not receive any data from actual data or statements. They assessments represent, for those properties represent the assessor's best estimate without having actual operating data. In addition to that, the owner requested at the first level review that said that the newly constructed properties are based on partial income of the property during the lease up period. We don't address the lease up period for this, for these properties. It's considered a cost of development. It's not considered in the scenario of our direct cap analysis, and it's done that way for all properties. The property rent roll dated September 30th had an occupancy of 76.31%. We estimated based on CoStar absorption in our market over the past 12 months has been 258 units or approximately 21.5 units per month. So the current lease up would be expected to be complete fairly quickly. We have a fairly strong and stable market with a current vacancy rate of 4.1% for apartment communities and an annual growth rate of 4.3%. So we don't have an economic imbalance in this market for this property type. As of November 1st, we estimated that approximately 14 more units would have been absorbed. We were a little conservative. We just said, let's do it less than the 21.5 that CoStar is reporting. And that would have resulted in an occupancy of approximately 82% as of the effective date of the assessment on November 1. I note that the package that was provided to us this morning indicated that I believe their occupancy in November was 79.1%, so it was fairly close. The worksheet is included on page 5 of your packet, and we provided a worksheet to Mr. Krebs as well. We estimated income per unit at 18,401 based on the property's initially reported asking rents. And we calculated the projected potential gross income on the basis of those rents and unit types using a 5% market vacancy and came to 18,401 per unit. That is less than what is being reported on the performance as of the rent roll on September 30th, which indicated 21,824 per unit based on the current rents collected of 363,754 per month. So we were below that.
And I do want to point out while we're at that point, that indicate, actually, here. Share this with the applicant.
Sure.
So they can see what.
Yeah.
That page right there. This is information that was provided by the applicant, so it's not new to me. But if you look on page 6, that 363,754, that was reported for the monthly income for the property in September. And that already shows 4.3, I mean, times 12 there. So since that's a monthly amount, is $4.3 million annualized, which is
Based on the current vacancy.
based on the current vacancy, exactly, at that time. It's slightly less than the number we used has stabilized, and it's far above the amount that the applicant used on his analysis of, I think, 3.75 million for the internal assessment.
Excuse me.
estimate. So I'm not sure.
Can I interrupt? That's net operating income, not revenue. That's after the 30% for the
Oh,
expenses
he's
been
doing
accounted
stabilized
for.
NOI here. 3,750,000.
Oh, okay, all right, well, that answers that, yes, okay. I just wanted to point that out.
Of course.
So I think, so we grossed up the revenue to potential gross of 5,720,000, applied a 5% market vacancy and got an estimated effective gross income at 5,434,000. We used a estimated operating expense of 6,000 per unit, which is 1,500,000 based on 250 units. That gave us an operating expense ratio at 32.6 before the deduction for reserves. The replacement reserves were, based on our schedule, were $300 per unit. And after deducting for the reserves, our operating expense ratio is 34.2, which is in line with the rest of the market. For the 2023 assessment, we had cap rates for grade 1 properties established at 4.25%. The cap rate schedule is included on page 7 of the packet. And we developed these cap rates based on survey data, based on comparable sales. And the cap rate used at 4.25% is supported by the survey data as well as the sales. We had local sales. We had one local sale that reported the cap rate we used was 4.5. It was a grade 1A, not a 1. And it actually, the reported cap rate on that sale was a 4.3. The remainder of the sales are regional and they range from the low 3s to 6.5 based on the properties. So, and they're all over. They're Richmond, they're Virginia Beach, and Enrico, Chesterfield, throughout the market area. So we had support for this cap rate that we used for our grade 1 properties based on the data that we had established as well as the PwC core patch data. So we believe that the assessment that we have based on the 4.25 cap is correct and equitable.
And at this point, I'll add in that the assessments that we're doing for these supplementals are really it's time during the year for when it's completed, but it's really based on the assessment of January 1st for the data that's available before that. Of course, the arguments, we had these same arguments earlier in the year because interest rates were going up even before January 1st. That Deb just shared with you, that interest rates were higher, cap rate in
Same rate.
2023, 2022. We're not seeing that cap rates are actually going. That doesn't really apply
To this,
because of the timing of the valuation.
And it's the same, and you did not like pressure test. You're using the same.
Exactly. You don't read. During the year. But we would, or
we would establish new cap rates as of January 1, 2020. To use the 2023 cap rates that were established.
Any questions for the? You understand what the. We're supposed to use the cap rate from 1/1/23.
Yeah, just two points in response. I followed your math and I came up with NOI and so on and so forth. As of year end 2022, my financing rates have risen from 0% to 5.3. zero, so what is a true market cap? From it's, yeah. I would argue that cap rates at that time had already. I will say, if we're retroactively applying a value. At that point, the property was. Not been completed, and I know that that's what the initial assessment was. 65%, but as of. Sorry, what year is it?
We feel that way too.
It's been delivered, it was 0% occupied. At the very least, should fully account for the fact. It would be. And that's what the 48 does, and that's why I think. 48, I don't understand. 1 million as of November, and just so we're clear. Back and forth within our office, the retroact. 2023 means that there's 2 months.
I can
71.1
answer
billion.
that question. So you were asking at the end.
Uh-huh.
So no, supplementals are done completely separately. For the second half. So
But are you saying that the last 6 months are at 71.1 or the last 2 months are at 71?
the last 2 months of the end of the year?
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah.
But anyway, that's all to say that if we're going retroactively based on data and our assumptions, our project wasn't delivered, there's 0% occupancy, and I think that should also be factored in. Now, that's, otherwise, I understand your logic. Everything you all did made sense, so.
Anything further on the rental, on the revenue discrepancy? Obviously, the assessor has the 4.6 revenue, you have 3.75. We have this 364, you have a couple figures in terms of what it is until November.
Yeah,
The assessor suggesting that the 4.6 actually, if you're 100% occupied and they take off the 5% market vacancy, it would actually, based on the numbers you're giving, it would actually be higher than 4.6. Is that accurate, or do you,
so.
or does that reflect the fact that you're saying these are the less desirable ones that are available?
So correct me if I'm wrong, I think the 4.6 was based on kind of. Pre-lease rental estimates, right? Their math in general for the 5.4 makes sense. It's basically taking our actual rental rates and saying, okay, you're at, I think it's based on September. You know, what do we assume the 5%, then minus 5% on the whole thing. It's
Okay. All right, so we're back.
Thanks.
Okay, so discussion on going back to this
I'm gonna see if I can connect again.
application number 95. Anybody have any thoughts? Want to start us off?
Based on what I understand, the scope of the January 1 assessment to be in the supplemental assessment, I don't think we can revisit the question of the cap rate. I think that's frozen in time from Jan 1, and so I would argue that we have to ignore that aspect of the request for adjustments.
Yeah, and we were consistent with that, and we have the sale from December, and that's been, I think, with our purpose of equalization, I think that's correct. I think we have to, if we're not looking at November 1st cap rates, then that's our 4.25 is what we've been at for the past one. So then the question is, any issues with revenue and the idea of assessing this property at 100%, which is 95%, I guess, when it's only being leased at 82%. The one thing I did note, and what I need to mention, is the NOI he's giving us is a much higher number than what the assessor is providing. So all things being, it ended up big. I think his number would have been higher if we're using the 4.25. But
Right, and actual like revenues are higher to the extent that we have it, right?
right.
I mean, it's persuasive to me that we evaluate the unit based on its potential, right? That's what he's saying that potential buyers will do. It's the way we've done the other assessments on multifamily properties. I don't think we really want to be wading into the vacancy rates in any particular year and adjusting based on that. Makes sense to me to use kind of the 5% vacancy estimate. And in fact, that will inure to the benefit of the property owner on some years, right? I mean, some years they'll beat that estimate. That's an average. So
Yeah, depending on, if it's gonna go up or down too, so. I just calculated this real quick, based on his stabilized future NOI, and if we use the 4.25 cap rate, it would be 80 million, so obviously it would be a lot more. Any other discussion? Any emotion?
I'd move to affirm the assessment that $5,750,000 for land, $65,432,400 worth of improvements, and a total valuation of, or total assessment of $71,182,400.
Do you have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What? I think that's all we have for today. We have a motion to adjourn,
Move we adjourn.
second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
So, I just wanted to mention, if you all, whether you plan to stay on the board for next year or not, if you would let your board member know, so they will know if they need to find somebody else, because it tends to take a while to find somebody. Ms. Malik did email somebody just the other day, I think it was just yesterday, and say, how would you like to, join the Board of Equalization? So, and he's the one that did not have anybody on the board this year.
Did everybody stay on next year?
I will likely be, oh, well, we can stop recording.